everybody, today is another story time. Today's video I actually did want to talk about work in Japan because I didn't make any work in Japan videos for a while, and honestly this whole time I've been working, so I kind of just wanted to rant about that a little bit. This last year, or I guess this last 9 months, I had a lot of job interviews, a lot of job interviews, and I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about the process, how frustrating it is, because I know a lot of people are looking for work in Japan right now, and honestly it is very frustrating. There are a few things you can do to make it easier, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experiences. So I've been working in Japan for 10 years. I've mostly been working in the English teaching sector. I've worked for private schools, I work for universities, I work for companies. I've done almost every kind of field, so I know quite a lot about the job market, and I'm always on the lookout for the next job that I want to do. That's the first thing I wanted to mention, is that I saw someone online before say to me that it seemed like a red flag that I was always doing job interviews looking for a new job or changing my job. Honestly, my biggest piece of advice I would give anyone is that your company doesn't care about you. Like, the corporate world doesn't care about you. You don't owe anyone loyalty. As long as you give your company the time allotted, or you wait until your contract ends, I really don't see any problem in changing job. And one of the biggest things in Japan is there's a lot of pressure on you, particularly as English teachers. Your companies will try to keep you in your job, and they will do anything they can. They will guilt you. They will say, and I've had this said to me before, and I know a lot of people have had this said to them, that, oh, if you leave, the children are gonna cry, they're gonna be so sad, like blah 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 blah. As someone who's worked in a lot of teaching jobs and met kids straight after their last teacher has left, they don't care. Like, they don't care. They literally, as soon as the last teacher is gone, they've forgotten about it. Like, don't get me wrong, I've met students that I taught 6 years ago, and they'll run up to me and they're like, oh my god, do you remember me? Like, you taught me when I was a junior high school student, and now I'm working in a company, blah 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 blah. It was really nice to have that experience with you, and I'm glad that you are my teacher. But they never get sad after you go. Like, this is a normal part of life, like change. And I think that particularly if you're a really good teacher, people will just be happy that they got to spend that time with you. So that's another thing that you have to be careful of. You get a lot of guilt when you want to change jobs, and I honestly don't think that you should hold that or feel that pressure, because a lot of it honestly is just bullshit. So yeah, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I was working at a private school for 6 years, and then because of my co-worker, both of us got let go suddenly. So I found myself suddenly in the job market, so I did a little bit exploring, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep being an English teacher or if I wanted to do something else. And that is when I've had one of the most exhausting and frustrating experiences of my entire life. Like, this video is mostly going to be about this job interview, but one of the jobs I've been doing, and I've did this job part-time for like a year, is I did SNS management, and I made content for and I managed the SNS of like a brand's account, and I made content for them, and I just did stuff like that, did promotion. So I considered going into that full time. And I don't know, but you've probably seen these everywhere, and I know these have been around for years, but there's these awful fucking like snack boxes or whatever, like those Japan box kawaii or whatever. They all have like similar names, and it's just like you pay a subscription, they send a box to your house, and it has like snacks and stuff and toys or whatever from Japan. And like, I feel like this thing got popular probably around 8 or 9 years ago, and then a billion companies made a similar idea, and now I feel like that business model isn't as popular anymore. But there's still a ton of companies that run this kind of business model, a lot of businesses like this in Japan, and there are quite a few companies that do that here. So this is a job that you can get, like working for one of these companies. So I have a background in SNS, so obviously I saw a job for one of these companies pop up, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. Biggest red flag is that to apply, you had to send them a video interview. So you had to make a video talking, just like introducing yourself for like a few minutes. That's already kind of a red flag, because it's like instantly this is just about looks. I understand this is an SNS job, so I kind of gave them a little bit of leeway for that, but it just felt cringe. Second red flag was they didn't put their email or anything. You couldn't respond to the job ad on this on the job. Like I had to mail the company on SNS. The only way that I could reach out to them was through the SNS saying, I saw your job posting on this website. Like immediately, this is such a big company, and this, like the job advertisement was so poorly done. Like I cannot believe, like you can't, like applicants cannot contact you. That is, sorry, but that is unacceptable. Like I should have just left it at that point. But I was kind of interested and I thought this could be fun. So I found them eventually, and then through mailing their Twitter or something, I managed to get the email of the manager, and I could send her my CV. And then after I sent them that, they wanted to have a video interview. And I think there was actually like 2 Zoom interviews, one after the other, like over the span of 2 weeks. So at this point, we're already like 3 weeks deep into this. Like I cannot believe, like this is another frustrating thing about job interviews in this economy, and it doesn't matter who I've spoken to about what job they're doing. A lot of the time the job interview process is like 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5, 6 steps, and that is ridiculous. I'm sorry, but you have my CV, you've had an interview with me. Any of the questions you wanted to ask about me, you should have asked then. There is no reason that there needs to be more than 2 interviews for a job. I'm sorry, ridiculous. So I had 2 interviews with them, and I was mostly dealing with the same woman. And I feel like this is the woman that put up the ad, because she was just so disorganized. She kept asking me the same questions over and over again. She was asking me a lot of questions, obviously about SNS and online stuff. But then a lot of the stuff I was replying with, she didn't even know what I was talking about. Like a lot of the time she just seemed so, she didn't have a lot of knowledge about what, even though she was interviewing me. And this is another thing I've had since I've been in Japan. I'm always being interviewed by people who just don't know what they're doing or what they're talking about, and these are people in managerial positions. I'm like, how are you the manager if you don't even know this? But anyway, so yeah, so I had that. So now like we're like 3 weeks deep into this. And then the next part was, she was like, okay, the next part of the interview is you have to film some content for us and we'll see if that's good. Already, I'm like, this is becoming a lot. Like, honestly, I was looking for a job, and I received, at that point, I'd been applying to some English teaching jobs as well. So I'm like, you know what? Like, a couple of companies had offered me jobs that were like, okay, so I'm like, maybe I should take that, because people don't understand that, like, particularly English teaching jobs in Japan, or any job really, has a small window. I can't waste like a month interviewing for one job that I might not get, when other jobs are telling me, we can give you a job right now, but you have to let us know like this week. So I took a chance with the stupid snack box company. I was like, okay, I'll wait a little bit longer and I'll see how this goes. I had to go to their office. I picked up a bunch of stuff. They gave me like a giant bag of stuff that I had to take pictures and videos of. So I went away and made a bunch of content, and the thing they asked me to do was very, very complicated. It was like they were releasing something with like different price systems, so I had to explain that. I had to edit this footage, I had to take this footage. I had to propose 3 plans, and they would pick from one. The one they decided for me to do was me traveling around Tokyo to different locations and doing things. So I spent a whole day doing this. And obviously I needed someone else to film me, so I had to pay for that person. I had to pay for food because I was going to cafes. It was very, very expensive and time consuming. I made the content. I sent it to them. She didn't reply for like a few days. I had to like keep reminding her. She replied. And then the content I made for her, she was like, oh, actually, we wanted you to make it like this. I'm like, why didn't you tell me? When I met you, you should have said, oh, keep it within this amount of time, or do this, or do that. Like, so I had to go back and make more content. And already I'm like, is this what working for this company is going to be like? Am I going to make content for them? And they're like, oh, actually, we wanted you to make a dance or something. And so like, it's just like zero, like just no communication at all. So then I came back, I sent them the footage, and they said, this is actually pretty good and we will use this. And the only good thing about this is they did actually pay me a little bit for the footage I made, which honestly, it took like a whole day and I spent a bunch of money. So honestly, I don't think I actually made any money from this, but they paid whatever, so I was glad that they at least reimbursed me a little bit. So I'm like, okay, so how did it go? Did I get the job? And she's like, oh, well, like, we have you and we have, like, this other person who seems, like, really good for the job, but it really does seem like you're gonna get the job. And I said, are you sure? Because I'm getting 2 offers right now, and if I don't let them know which one I want, I'm gonna lose this chance. So I need to know right now, am I in, you know, like, do I have a chance of getting this? And she's like, yeah, you're our front runner right now, like, blah 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 blah. And like, what is this, like a race, like, already? Like, this other, are you sending this other person out to make a whole bunch of content too? I feel like you are. So anyways, then she asked me to make more content, so she gave me an even bigger bag of stuff. Like, it was 2 bags of stuff. I had to bring a suitcase. It was like so much stuff, and already, like, I live in like a Japanese house, so it's like this shit is clogging up my house. It's all like plushies and snacks that I don't want, so I just like away. So I went away and I started to make content again, and then I mailed her again, like, okay, how's it going, you know, like, because it's been like a month now, and like, I'm sorry, but this is unacceptable. Like, this job doesn't even pay that much, like, for real. Like, I just thought I would go into this field because it would be interesting, but actually I can make more money as an English teacher, so maybe I just want to do that. And she said, oh, I'm sorry, like, I forgot to tell you, but you didn't get the job, but like, we still want to work with you. We still want you to make content for us, like, part-time, like, as a freelancer. So I immediately just packed everything in the bag and was like, fuck this, I'm not doing this. So I just gave up. I didn't send them anything else. I'm like, you know what, don't worry about it, I'll just give you back the stuff. They wasted a month, and like, I get it in interviews, like, you don't know if you're gonna get it or not, but she really kept saying that I was gonna get the job, and she kept saying stuff like, oh yeah, it's looking really good, like, blah 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 blah. I just feel like she never had the intention of hiring me in the first place. They just wanted someone to make content. If that's the case, just ask me to make content. And I feel like this has been happening a lot with like these SNS jobs, and I've met people in similar situations where they've been in a job interview process and they're making content for a job when actually their job has no intention of hiring them. They're just farming them for content, and they do this over and over again with like multiple applicants and just get lots of content. Just hire someone to make content for you. Jesus Christ. So yeah, as you can tell, this whole thing just really frustrated me, and it exhausted me, and it made me not want to do any more job interviews because I had been doing Zoom call after Zoom call with these people. I had been filming stuff, I had been editing. It was just really stressful. And yeah, I just felt really disrespected in the end, and I just like, okay, that's it. And the funny thing is that I actually saw another job for their main competitor came up, and I applied for it out of spite. I had a Zoom call with them, and then I went to their head office, and I had an interview with them, which is probably the most stressful interview I've ever had in my life. Like, I met the guy, he gave me like a bag of stuff, and he would pull out a product in front of me, and he was filming me the whole time, and he was like, okay, sell this to me. So I had to sell him the product and make like a tagline for it and blah 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 for each product, and they were all wildly different products. And afterwards he was like, yeah, that was great, like, I think you can really work here. And then at that moment I was like, I actually agreed to go with another English teaching job, and honestly I think I'm just gonna go with that. Like, not gonna lie, I'm just like, I can't with this anymore. So I ended up going back to an old company I used to work with, and now I'm just working there. That company, the competitor company, was actually really nice, and he's like, yeah, if you want to work with us in the future, like, come back. And I feel like that there could be something there. But having worked doing a part-time job in SNS stuff and working with other snack company, I just feel like I don't want to do that. Like, it wasn't fun for me, honestly. It was really stressful, and it just, I don't know, like, I know everyone tends to look down on English teachers, but I honestly, in my English teaching job, I get to meet loads of people. I feel like there everyone's better at communicating. I have a very clear idea of what I'm doing. Whereas jobs like that at like these kind of like dodgy startups, I just feel like at no point you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, yet people expect you to go the extra mile for their shitty company. So I think like at this point in my life, I just want to like a very clear-cut job. So yeah, the funny thing is that I met a girl after I did that, and she had an interview with the other company. So there's actually like 3 main like these snack box companies in Japan, and she had a job interview with the other one, and according to her, it was way worse than my experience. The guy she met, who was the boss of the company, he was clicking at her, and it was like a similar kind of thing. Like, they'd give her a product and they're like, sell it, come up with an idea right now. And he was clicking at her and he was like, if you can't figure out how to sell this stuff, like, it's useless, like, blah 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 blah, and like really putting a lot of pressure on her. Honestly, if that's how much pressure the interview is, I can't imagine what the job is. So yeah. A job interview is a good indication of what the actual job is going to be like, and if it's horrific, then yeah, don't want it, sorry. So yeah, that was my first biggest hurdle. In that time, and since I've started working for my old company, as I started working with them, I told them I had no intention of staying because the job I'm at now pays really, really well, but it's just quite stressful and it's a lot of work and the hours are long. So I kind of just want to like work something a little bit of a slower pace. So that's why I'm still doing job interviews now. Don't hate my job by any means, honestly. It's just I'm always looking for something else. So I've done a lot of job interviews for English companies, and Jesus Christ, I think the end of last year I must have had like 20 job interviews. They're all on Zoom. And this is another thing. Some are on Zoom, some are on Google Meets or whatever, some are on Skype. So I had to download all these conference apps and make all these accounts, which was really, really frustrating. And then I had to have all these interviews. And the most frustrating thing about these companies, because they're English teaching dispatch companies, is a lot of the time they won't tell you what they have until you pass their interview process. And a lot of the time the interview process can be 2 interviews. So I was interviewing for all these companies and passing all of these checks, and maybe 5 or 6 times I got to the end, I got the job, or as I was accepted into the company, only to find that they didn't have any jobs in my area, or just like the salary wasn't good enough. So one company I had said that they had jobs in my area. I went through a 2 conference call interview with them, got to the end, found out that the only job they had was like an hour and 54 minutes away from me, and I'm like, no, absolutely not. And they're like, oh, well, you know, it's not that bad. I'm like, what do you mean it's not that bad? I'm not commuting 4 hours a day at least. Like, absolutely not. So that was one gone. Another couple I had didn't tell me the salary, and they said they wouldn't tell me until a later interview. I got to the later interview and I straight up said, that's not enough money, sorry, bye. Like, and this is another thing, is a lot of these companies focus on sunken cost fallacy. They'll keep, a reason that they keep interviewing so much is when you get to the end, you're like, okay, this wasn't a position I really wanted. It's a little bit far. It doesn't pay as much, but I've been through this whole process, so I guess I should take it. This is what they do. They try to wear you out, and I think you just have to be very conscious of this, and you have to take lots of breaks from interviewing sometimes, because honestly, the end of last year, I was completely drained. The worst one, or one of the worst ones I had, is I had a job interview and I had to speak to these guys over Skype chat, and then I had a job interview with them on conference call after sending them my resume and all these documents, blah, 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 blah. And then the end of the interview, and it went fine. They're like, yeah, we like you. And I'm like, oh, actually, this job seems like something I could be interested in. End of the interview, they said, oh, I hope it's not a problem, but we don't sponsor visas. I'm like, what do you mean you don't sponsor visas? You're hiring foreigners. Like, the only reason anyone would take this job is to get a visa. Let's be honest here. And yeah, so it was a no-go. Like, obviously, or they will help you find an apartment around the area. So that's a little bit easier. But yeah, as for now, my job pays pretty well, and I also have a lot of side jobs. Like, obviously I get money from my designs and stuff like that, so it's not too bad. It's just I would like to get another job that's kind of a little bit less stressful. My word of advice is I would keep checking the job market. So if you're a foreigner looking for like a basic entry-level job, then you're probably looking at Gaijinpot or Dai Job, or there's a few job boards for English-speaking jobs. So yeah, you'll probably be looking there. My piece of advice is, even if you're comfortable in your job, or if you know you're going to be looking for a job in a year, keep checking, because there are the same few company names that will always keep coming up, and there's different hiring seasons, and it's kind of like observing patterns. So if you keep looking at the job market for a few months, you can kind of see which jobs keep coming and going, which jobs seem easy to get, and the best time to get hired. Because particularly if you're working in a school, there are hiring seasons, like of course when the school year starts. And that in Japan is different. It's in April. So if you're looking for an English speaking job in a school, you probably want to start looking like February, March. Just observing patterns can be really, really useful when you're looking for a job. Now the year has reset, I've started looking for new jobs again, but honestly I would recommend just giving yourself plenty of time to rest if you can, because it is really draining. And the job market is pretty brutal for any field in any country right now. I feel like a lot of my friends overseas are having the same problems, and particularly in Japan, it's not great. So just don't stress yourself out too much. It's not a problem with you, it's a problem with the market, and the market goes up and down, so it could change. But one good thing is that in this process I learned a lot about myself and what I want to do. At one point I was really focused on going into SNS and going into SNS management and content creation for a company, and after I did that for a while, and maybe I'll make a video about my SNS job because I didn't really talk about it that much online. After I did that, I decided actually I don't want to do that anymore, and it's not anything that I would want to do for money. So, and I also found out, like, because I have so many jobs, it really helps if my main job I'm only working a maximum of 4 days a week. And through this whole process, I really learned a lot about myself, how I like to work, the things I like, the things I don't like, and a lot of deal breakers for me. And I think that's really, really important. If you can figure out your deal breakers, the things you want from a job, the things that you will never do, it does make it much, much easier. Give yourself more credit. Like, don't get pressured into any job that you don't really want to do, that's too far from you, that doesn't pay enough from you. This is how the job market is winning right now. It's just exhausting people, and people are so exhausted they're taking jobs that they don't really want. I'll keep you updated on how my job search is going. I did a couple of interviews recently, so I'm hearing back from that in the next couple of days. Right now my job situation is fine, so it's not like I'm desperately looking for a job, but it's always good to keep looking for the next step. Let me know how your job search has been going in Japan, or if you plan on looking for a job in the future. If you have any questions, let me know. Again, I've been in the job market in Japan for quite a long time. I have a lot of friends in different fields, so I know quite a lot about it. I'm not a master by any means, but I think it's really important that we have an open conversation about this and we share all the information that we can get. So yeah, thank you for watching, and as always, please subscribe.